All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. Per the usual, I'm your host, Coach J.K. McLeod, and I want to start off today's episode by saying thank you for choosing to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast. I know that you have plenty of other podcast content that you can consume and most likely do consume. So I truly never take it for granted that you have chosen to press play on this episode and hopefully future episodes if you subscribe. Hint, hint to the podcast of the Help Me Understand podcast. Today's podcast is intended to be a short message of gratitude and also some encouragement to just start, just go do the thing. Today's episode is being recorded and released on January 1st, 2026. So if you are listening in real time, then happy new year and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into a couple of things with today's episode. First thing that comes to mind with some context behind why I want to talk about just getting started and also how that loops into my gratitude for you, the listener of the Help Me Understand podcast, is that as I've been taking some time to recap the year here, and I just pressed something weird on my computer. There we go. As I've been taking some time to recap 2025 and formulate my jumping off point for 2026, which for me, my big jumping off point really happens in February. I tend to spend the majority of January really taking time to understand different things that happened in 2025, actions that I took based on particular events and all that good stuff. It's kind of my time to regroup and really address the foundation of things that I do prior to really committing to, all right, this is the vision for 2026. This is what's going to happen. So January 1st for me is more of the start of the maintenance of the foundation for my personal development goals versus the jumping off point. So one of the things that I will be focusing on is taking a look at this very podcast, the Help Me Understand podcast, and getting an understanding of where I want the podcast to go in 2026. And if you listen to not last episode with Melissa, the previous episode right before that one, you may have caught the portion where I talked about the format that I've had for the majority of 2025, where Tuesday was depending on direction that we go, a fitness and nutrition adjacent episode, and whether or not I will keep that same sort of a structure or move it to a different day, or maybe even start a completely different podcast that's focused just on fitness and nutrition. I'm leaning, again, that's still very up in the air. So if you are somebody who's a listener to the podcast and you've got some feedback on that, let me know. Always interested in hearing what you may have to say. But getting back to the point, one of the things that I do is I took some time to go back and look at where things are with the Help Me Understand podcast from the time that it started up until now. For those of you who may not be aware, when I first started the podcast back in 2020, it was February of 2020 that I recorded and released the first episode. And when I first started the podcast, I wasn't sure what I was going to name it. And when I came up with Help Me Understand, a big driver for that is because that is a phrase that I can't remember where it really started for me, because it's been so ingrained in my daily vernacular or verbiage or whatever the right term is. It's just the way that I talk. I have used the phrase help me understand for as long as I can remember. In conversations and in interactions, in order to try and get an understanding of the perspective someone else was bringing to an interaction that we may have. And when I went to name the podcast, Help Me Understand, and I don't have the exact stuff in front of me. If I remember correctly, there were at least 2, maybe 3 or more podcasts that were also some version of Help Me Understand. Some of them were the Help Me Understand podcast. I think there was another one called Help Me Understand, like the Mormon Church or something like that. And I think there were a couple that were just Help Me Understand. And for a moment, or more than a moment, I let myself think, all right, well, there's already these Help Me Understand podcasts. Like maybe I should think of something different. And I'm glad that I decided not to follow that path of thinking, well, there's already Help Me Understand podcast out there, so I can't use that name. I decided to use that name, and I'll take some time at some point before the end of January to go back and look to see where those particular podcasts are right now. Last I looked, which was around this time last year, I don't know that any of those podcasts were even still going at this point in 2025, or if they had, I don't think any of them had made it beyond maybe 50 episodes, and I might be overshooting on that. And at this point, with this release of the Help Me Understand podcast, we are at episode 265 of Help Me Understand. This is going to be the 265th episode. And this is where my gratitude comes in to say thank you to anyone who's ever listened to the podcast, passed on an episode of the podcast, just anything that you've done in order to contribute, whether it was directly where you talked to me directly or sent me a message directly, or I'm a big believer in even just energy just kind of transfers. So if you've been somebody who's been silently encouraging me to continue with the Help Me Understand podcast, then I want to say thank you, because we are now going into, this would be year number 5, I guess, or year number 6 of Help Me Understand. And a little fun fact that I want to share with you, and then I will share a quick piece of reflection that I had from this morning's reading that I had in a daily reader. But something that I had realized as I was going back through to look at the numbers year over year as we've made our way, and I say we because if you've been listening for a while, you're part of this journey. So as we've made our way to 265 episodes, I want to very quickly run you through how many episodes I've put out each year from 2020 until now, because it's a wild ride. So in 2020, I put out 37 episodes. I started in February of 2020. That's when the first episode came out. I think it was February 18th, if I remember correctly. So I put out 37 episodes in 2020. In 2021, I put out 17 episodes. In 2022, I put out 40 episodes. In 2023, I put out 35 episodes. In 2024, I put out 61 episodes. And in 2025, I officially released 85 episodes of the podcast. So just to run through that really quickly again with the numbers, stick with me here because there's a message behind the monotone. Message behind the monotone. That might be another segment here. From 2020 up until now, 37 episodes, then 17, then 40, then 35, then 61, then 85. And I could not begin to tell you how many times along the way that I questioned, am I really even doing this right? What is my purpose? Do I need to go back and realign? Do I need to scrap this particular feed and just completely start over? Am I talking too much about one thing and not enough about the other thing? Just all sorts of different things along the way since February of 2020 to now January of 2026, 64, now 65 episodes later. My message to you, based on the perspective that I'm bringing from the podcast, and really I think it applies to anything, is just start. And I am fully aware that if your algorithm is even like slightly like mine, there's no shortage of messages of just start, just do the thing around this time of the year, especially with it being January 1st. And I read something this morning, and there was a very short snippet from it where it quoted St. Francis of Assisi, who said, "Start doing what is necessary, then do what is possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible." And that could not possibly be more relatable to the journey of the Help Me Understand podcast. Can't remember which episode it was. I had gone over the origin story of how the podcast started, so I'm not going to recap that in this episode. Just that line though, that quote, start doing what is necessary, then do what is possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible. It hits different, as the kids like to say, when I think back to specifically the journey so far of the Help Me Understand podcast and where I want to go. So this is me, number one, saying thank you again for not just 2025, for 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Thank you. And thank you in advance for 2026, because I only plan to just keep going in some way, shape, or form. I'm just going to keep going. So, number one, thank you. Number two, whatever you are looking at doing, just start. Just start the thing. Even though you are concerned about, am I going to be doing this right? Who is going to have whatever to say to me about what I'm doing? Am I going to alienate certain people? Am I going to piss some people off? Am I going to get some negative feedback? Am I going to get some feedback that makes me feel uncomfortable? Am I going to have people that are looking at me a certain way? Just again, this is bigger than me talking about podcasting. I'm just talking about if there's something that you have said, I want to do and I'm going to do and I will do this year, then just start, just do the thing and do what you can do right now and just get started. Like, just keep the ball rolling. I cannot tell you how many things I thought I needed to do before launching the Help Me Understand podcast that now, as I look back, I'm like, man, that wasn't necessary to do. Like, just because I launched in February of 2020, in 2020, doesn't mean that that's the time that I actually got the idea. I had that idea long before and kept waiting and waiting and, well, giving myself all sorts of quote unquote reasons why I just couldn't start yet. I needed to find the perfect mic. I needed to find the perfect studio. Like, that's a funny story in and of itself, because I thought that I was going to record every episode in person and rent a studio with a budget that I didn't have, with sponsors that I don't have. Like, that was a wild thought at that time. And then here we are, 264 episodes later. So two things. First, thank you. Two, if you're on the fence about something, or even if you're not on the fence, if you're on the other side of the fence where you're like, I'm not doing this, flip it, get on the fence, move over to the other side and just get started. Get the ball rolling, get the car moving down the path that you need to. Last thing is putting this out there, knowing that in 2024, we had 61 episodes. In 2025, put out 85 episodes. So that was a growth of about 24 episodes. It only seems fitting that 100 episodes is the target for 2026, which is going to average around 2-ish episodes per week. So that is the target for 2026. If you have, as we wrap up, if you have ideas, concepts, questions, topics, fitness, life, and otherwise related that you think could make an interesting topic for me to share my perspective on, then do not hesitate, please, to reach out to me on Instagram. It's at Coach JK McLeod. That's MCLEOD. And or you can email me, jk@jkmcleod.com. All right. So that's what I wanted to leave you with. Whatever it is that you are thinking about doing, just start it. Just go ahead and do it. And feel free to tap in with me and let me know what that thing is and how it might be going. All right. So thank you again for listening to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. Take care. I'll talk to you next time.